Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brian Lastovich, head of marketing at Customer, and with me is Sean Clarke of PacificIQ. We are going to talk about AI, CX together, and what that looks like now and in the future. Sean, thank you so much for joining us, man. You're the first guest here, so we're probably going to mess up like so many times, but let's just roll with it, right?
No, of course. Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm excited to chat about this. It's like the forefront, so it's super exciting times, and I'm really excited to see how this is going to develop as the product and the ecosystem develops.
So tell me a little bit about Pacific IQ. Let's start off there because this is your baby, right? It's like 8-9 years now.
It is, yeah, yeah. It's really the combination of just like a ton of time on the brand side, working with other agencies and understanding, what was and wasn't working and what were my pain points as a merchant. And now, we focus mainly on Shopify Plus. We only work with Shopify clients generally, so we're like hardcore into that tech stack. We focus mainly on the balance between design and CRO. So how do you make a website that meets all the branding guidelines and is impressive and people like, but also converts? So conversion rate, average order value, lifetime value, they're sort of the data points we obsess about in that design process. So we do a lot of work with existing brands, new brands, whatever, but we've developed like a kind of proprietary way to approach it to make sure that revenue is looked after.
Oh, I like that. So maybe take a step back. So what are some of those brands that have worked with you, and then maybe tell us a little bit about when's that right time in a Shopify brand's life that's like, hey, Pacific IQ might be a good point or someone that we should work with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the most common like thread that I've found with people that we've worked with is they're starting to spend more and more money on media to try and generate more revenue. And so we look at that holistically. Like, yes, we can spend more money on Meta, Google ads to generate more revenue, but let's perhaps focus on converting the traffic that you've got now better so you get a better return. So people are so focused on, return on ad spend, which you should be, but let's make sure your site foundation is set up to handle a high volume of traffic first. Some examples or case studies that come to mind like would be Sweetie's Bake Shop, which is like a local business based in LA. They pump out cookies, cakes, cupcakes for celebrities, corporates, but then also just like, your daughter's birthday, and it's all custom. So one of one made for you, and you can pick it up the next day. So it's a really amazing like operational business. We've been working with them for about 18 months. And Shopify recently published a case study where we were able to double their conversion rate with a new site design. Again, purely focused on conversion while also making sure that it hit their brand guidelines. So yeah, every client's different. And as to when, it just depends. Like I would say when you're starting to spend in your mind a lot of money on media, that's when you really need to focus on CRO. And it's different for every brand. The amount could be 10K a month on ads. It could be 100K a month on ads. Just depends.
Okay. So that Sweetie's example, that was in-store retail as well as an online, or was that only online?
So it was both. It is now only online. They do have a physical bakery where you can pick up, but they decided through COVID to focus purely online, and that's now the future of the business is just acquiring customers through a variety of channels, but processing all the orders through Shopify.
Okay, that's awesome. And then tell me a little bit about, and we'll get into AI stuff in a second, but just curious about your take on even just the e-commerce tech stack in general. Are there tools that, again, outside of CX is fine, but are there tools that really help you when you think of CRO specifically?
Oh, for sure. We have like a preferred tech stack, and it's kind of like this little club at the top with Shopify. Klaviyo is probably the next one that we're always recommending to just increase, LTV.
Yeah.
And just keep all your data in a place that's useful when it comes to customers. Reviews are really important. Okendo is sort of our preferred partner there. Subscription is an interesting one. We love Recharge and Stay.ai. So they're two competitors, but we like them both for different applications.
You got to balance. You got to like them all.
Yeah, and the list goes on. But there's definitely a bunch of complementary apps that we like to work with to make sure that AOV and LTV are being looked after. But again, depends on the use case, depends on what the merchant sells, where they're at in their growth. CX though is super important. Like I think a lot of people overlook that, especially when it comes to like a labor perspective and how much that can cost if you don't dial that in and what the customer experience is. Like it's so important that I think a lot of merchants really overlook that.
Well, let me ask you about this. Since you're talking to the clients a lot, like my hypothesis is that um, it wasn't talked about a lot years ago because you were working with, and you meaning like brands were working with like marketers, someone that was specifically just focused on like pipe and driving new customer acquisition to their website. And I feel like there's been this shift, and maybe more people are actually trying to measure metrics outside of just new customer, and maybe it's more about retention now. And again, like what you said, the LTV. And so when you put people in those types of positions, they then need tools and resources to think about LTV as opposed to, again, 2, 3 years ago when it was only new customer acquisition. So that then leads and bleeds into like, well, what am I going to do now in order to hit my numbers and increase my numbers? You have to think about CX. And I feel like that trend is like really starting to increase. Am I like, what do you think of that? Like, am I on the right page there, or would you argue differently?
No, I would absolutely. Like I can, my call before this like recording was all about CX and specifically shipping insurance and like how we can better protect customers, communicate to them at the point of purchase. This is what you're covered for. This is what you're not covered for. But the end goal was like, how do we reduce friction for the customer and how do we protect ourselves from not having 1,000 tickets a day? And so I think absolutely, it's almost like trending up is now people are thinking about this kind of like back end of the business, like operationally, just as much as the front end. And I think to your point, having a tool that you can kind of analyze all this stuff in is important. We're big fans of like Triple Whale and then potentially some other tools to bring in other data points to create like dashboards and things. But a lot of the time it's just about having a partner, and it might be me, it might be another agency, it might just be someone internally that is routinely looking at these things. Like, what do these scores look like? How can we make it better? And just every day doing something small to improve it.
Where do you, so when you're talking about all this different data, and then we could talk about different tech stacks too, but like we said, like all of a sudden we're talking about insurance data. Where does that go at the end of the day? Like if you were to talk about some use cases and case studies with clients that you work with, where do you push that information to better understand it? And this is more or less me being curious right now.
Sure. So us as PacificIQ, we use a reporting tool that pulls in data from like all the usual data points. So we can pull it in from like Google, we can pull it from Shopify, all these other like SaaS products. Anything that's more niche, like insurance. So we have a tool that we like to use for Shopify merchants that allows them to self-insure, meaning that it actually becomes a revenue center for them. And they can provide their customers with a much more frictionless, let's call it claim process, because they're not going back to an insurer to get an approval. They're the approver. And frankly, we just pull the data from the platform. So it lives in an app. There's a great little section. We bring that into their monthly report manually. So sometimes the data connectors aren't available. So we just source it wherever it's best displayed and it's most useful, and then consolidate that down into a monthly report where we go through like, email, we'll go through reviews, we'll go through conversion rates. And then on there is like, all right, let's look at insurance. Let's look at what it's doing. We've found that is really the only way to get it in a format at the moment that we're happy with. And it's a little manual, but it doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah. And I asked that too, because like CX, in my opinion, like CX, you first start with like, okay, well, I have to understand everything there is about a customer. So if I have to do that, I have to pull every single touch point out there from the very first touch point to like, oh, we just sent them a notification or an email about that. And I try to wrap my head around it because it's like, you brought up Klaviyo, right? Like in Klaviyo, okay, I could see them. They're kind of like a CRM where it's like, all right, push all the data there to then push out any sort of workflow. So I could see that. But then when it comes to CX, I feel like Klaviyo is maybe a little more on the marketing side of the house, customer acquisition, and there's still like that gap there. So it's interesting concept, I think, just because like there is, if we're talking about CX, you have to understand every single data point. If you're going to make decisions, you have to bring that all together. So where do you put it?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everyone, and I think I just always encourage people to be curious. Like, go and look at the data everywhere and be involved. And if we're dealing with a founder or a C-suite kind of person, like speak to the CX people, like speak to the people that are in charge of this stuff and on the
Yeah.
ground, getting the feedback in real time, because it's really insightful, like as well as the data points. And it's something you just have to stay on top of. It's constantly needs to be iterated on because trends change, sentiment changes, product catalogs change too. So yeah.
So let me move on to just the kind of the main point, CX and AI, which I probably should have talked about a while ago, but this is super interesting right now. Let me, I guess, first ask you, have you ran into any AI solutions in CX yet that have been interesting to you? Is that even top of mind? What do you think about that?
I think it's still very early. I think to me they're all very interesting. I feel like in e-commerce, like CX is probably one of the biggest places where it can apply with the greatest value. And I think it's very early, but I think it's pretty promising what it can do, especially for merchants with big product catalogs or product catalogs that change or highly specific stuff. And if we get to the point where we can train the AI or the LLM model around the particular merchant's data set and even like their tone of voice and all those sorts of things,
Yes.
I think it's going to be massive. I think it's going to be an amazing experience for consumers, and I think it's going to save brands a lot of money.
Have you leveraged any AI yet with your clients
We do
in CX?
not in CX specifically. No, not
Okay.
yet, not yet. We certainly will. I'd love to. I mean, I'm always looking for the application for people, but we haven't got there yet for CX.
How about future challenges? Do you think, just off the top of your mind, you think this is what would be a future challenge when you think about this?
I think there's a lot. I think training the model's a big one. Setting up like the guardrails is going to be another. Like letting it what it can and cannot do that's within its limitations, and just making sure generally it's secure. I think is going to be a challenge, but I think it's so promising early. Like already you have a play with the chat GPTs of the world and sort of Google's Bard products. I feel like it's very close to being almost able to be fully autonomous and learn as it goes.
Yes, that's what's amazing and scary at the same time. But I will say that I do think it depends on the founder, and I've been having this conversation. I'm curious what you think. I think the founder plays a really important role in this because CX means so many different things to so many different people and brands. And so it's like, what do you want your brand to be, right? Do you want your brand to be the white glove experience? Like, hey, we're going to get on the phone with you. We always have someone waiting to walk you through whatever needs to be walked through. Or is it better just to automate everything where it's very, very efficient, very, very fast? Ticket comes in, tickets closed, right? And I think there's so many different approaches to that, and it depends on the founder, right? Like what do you want your brand to look like? And I'm curious when I say that, have you had those discussions with certain founders and people, and do you find that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Like across the board too. Like some people that we work with are like, they want to use AI tools to develop all their product copy, or they want to use it like now to save as much time as they can. But it's not developed enough to be consistent in the brand's tone of voice. I haven't found. And we have other founders that are like, nah, hands off. Like this has to be white glove. It has to be bespoke. It has to be humans. And there's even like an ethical component to some founders that are well funded with successful businesses are like, I'm not firing people to put in AI. Like I like employing people. They're part of our family, and I want to provide that personalized service. I think as it relates to CX though, there's an interesting application, which is just consistency of tone of voice, which sometimes you struggle to get with multiple agents. And like, not so much in
Mm.
ecom, but like, an airline's an example where sometimes you'll get like, the level one person that's just reading canned responses that's really not listening to you or understanding your query. You eventually get someone more senior that's like, oh, okay, I hear you. I know what your problem is. I can solve it very quickly. And I think that like gap potentially can be solved with AI in that you're getting like a much higher quality response rate first, if the AI model is trained correctly.
I just want to put a pin on something. So, as you were saying, like one of the challenges, right, is consistency of the brand, the voice of the brand. And of course I was like, oh yes, sure. Like I definitely get it. But now with the example that you just used with like the multiple reps, like I was just on a phone call I told you about, like with a resort. I got I called three different times. I got three different reps, and I had three completely different experiences, right? One that didn't want to talk to me, the other one that seemed really, really frustrated and anxious at the same time, and one that was completely like just amazing conversation with them. And right now, I feel like brands are like only the best of the best brands have the agent, no matter who you're talking to, you're talking with the same type of individual, and that represents the brand. And it's really, really hard to do. So now I'm thinking about it like, gosh, if you put AI on top of that, I think you have a much better chance to like develop that consistency of tone and brand and voice throughout chat, again, email, whatever that is, rather than relying on individual people and teaching them.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree, and I think it's so important. And even just talking in, like, let alone the service level that you expect, even just the tone of voice, like brands that are like really specific, like Chubby's as an example, the way they talk to their customers, to be able to replicate that really cohesively through CX with AI would be amazing. Like that's the kind of experience customers want. Very hard to do with humans.
What's Chubby's? I should know this, but I don't.
Oh, Chubby's is like this tongue-in-cheek men's shorts brand. They now sell many more things than that, but they launched and it was just like, we make kick-ass shorts for guys, but their photo shoots were like, just playing beer pong and not taking anything very seriously. Like it was kind of like the anti-campaign.
Yeah.
And just the language in their ads is very specific. So,
And their AI,
it's just,
not their AI, the tone and the brand and the voice kind of came through rather easily.
yeah. I mean, in the early days, you
That
did notice
represented that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm just trying to think of another example. Like, I mean, yeah, Sweetie's Bake Shop, our client, would be another one. Like, their tone of voice is very cute. It's very pink. It's very whimsical. And again, sometimes humans can't portray that as accurately as the brand would like them to, and there's lots of reasons for that. But that AI would solve that pretty quickly.
Any thoughts on in terms of CX channels, how to think about channels, and why I'm asking you a little bit of context and background. I think we've come from a place before of like, all right, you have to have a really good web chat, a chat app on your website. And then I think it was like, okay, well, you got to be around on Instagram or you got to be around on WhatsApp and so forth. And I think we're getting to a point, and I say this on behalf of customer, where it's just table stakes at this point right now. Almost, yep, you have to communicate wherever your customers are. Now, from your point of view and CX and talking with clients and brands, and someone is asking about, how we should think about support in those channels, like how would you have that conversation with them? Is it all right, you just got to be everywhere, where that sounds like a lot? Or would you say, no, CX brand channels of where you're going to be is actually a strategic choice, and it maybe might be more about, hey, this is how we represent our brand. Have you had those conversations? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, all the time. I think you have to go through a lot of discovery with the brand to get to the right answer. I feel like if the brand is powerful and they have a really strong, loyal customer base, you can be more specific about channeling them into one channel. So it's like, we don't do phone support, we don't do live chat. It's
Yeah.
all email. That's not a good customer experience, but they're the kind of chats that we have. I am a fan of trying to be selective, on where people can reach you and how. I think you've got to try and keep it convenient to the user. And for me, like SMS is just the obvious answer for a younger demographic. But then if your customers are predominantly over 50, that's no good. Like that's intrusive. They don't want to know about that. And for the most part, they may even not want to do email. So it's prescriptive. I think it depends on the brand, where they're at in their growth cycle, who their customers are, as to like which ones to lean on. But yeah, it's hard. And I think, Apple's use of iMessage versus text is also another interesting one, and whether or not you choose to ignore that as a channel or integrate that as another channel is interesting. And costs come into it too. Like more channels is potentially more cost and more things to keep updated and things like that. So look, if you can afford to do lots and do it well. But just make sure whatever you're going to do it very well. Don't do them all badly. Just if you can only do email, just do email and do it amazingly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, hold on. Convince me on this SMS. I'm going to kind of throw a tangent out there.
Hit
Um,
me.
and maybe I'll cut this out later, who knows? But I feel like technology companies are really pushing strong for the last 2 3 years, really pushing strong on SMS, right? Like you had the attentives that started with SMS tracker, then they went to email, and you had the Klavios that started at email. They're like, oh, I got to do SMS, and there's everything. I won't name anyone else, but everyone else, like I feel like is pushing SMS. But whenever I'm a consumer on the SMS side, I've never, and maybe I'm just like the wrong, this is maybe biased. Like I have not purchased on SMS. Like I thought that as maybe it's a good way to get a promo, but I've pretty much been spammed when I do give my phone number, and spammed with like just a promo every single week within a certain product and service.
Yeah.
I'm like, am I totally off? Like, tell me that SMS works. Have you seen SMS work in the wild?
Yeah, I have, but you have to be very careful with it for the exact reason you've described. So promotionally, it is like I would tell our clients to use it sparingly. It might be twice a year, promotional SMS, right? It's fine for like abandoned cart and things that are transactional and
Mm,
help, like support, like, hey, where's my order? What's my tracking? That's fine. I think you have to be very careful. I think for the most part, your experience is spot on. I don't want to know about your new product release or 10% off your next purchase every day or every week from three different brands. It's way too intrusive. And I think that that is the general sentiment. Like it works in the wild, but the drop off's massive. So we've worked with
yeah.
clients that send SMS every week, starts up here, and over time it just decays unless there's new people coming into the funnel all the time to keep it sort of on track. If it's just the same set of users, the fatigue is massive.
Mm. Here's my hot take. Give SMS to the retention marketer and like the customer experience manager. Like, don't give it to the customer acquisition manager, the person that's leading pipeline and new customer acquisition, I think, because that changes the game, right? When someone's looking at it like, okay, after the purchase, how do I use SMS to give them like a really great experience? And then it's maybe more about proactiveness of like, okay, something just happened. They're not getting their order. Their hotel room was canceled. And it's like, let's send that via SMS because they know that they'll see it in a couple seconds. And then if they have a question, they can give us a call rather
Yeah.
than the new customer acquisition side of like, hey, let's send them a promo this week. How about that? But I don't know. I'm usually on the new customer acquisition side, and it's like I love all the tools. I think it's just like, you get into the weeds, and you're like, yeah, let's just test this out. And then it's to your point, you see it decay.
Yeah.
Um,
You need to be careful. And I think that's the precautionary tale for founders or, managers that you have to look at this holistically. Don't let the marketing team go crazy with it. And then you've got
yeah.
no LTV. Like you need to look at it holistically it would be my take on it.
In the future, do you see more agents with AI technology, or do you see much less agents with AI technology when it comes to CX?
Ooh, it's a great question. I think that there'll probably be less agents, but there'll be other jobs managing the AI. So I think like any sort of revolution or new technology, some jobs are going to go away, but new jobs are going to be created. So I think potentially headcount could definitely go down, but I like to be positive about humans being employed. Is kind of my take on it. But look, you can if your objective is to save money on labor, for sure, AI is going to do a great job. You could potentially cut a bunch of headcount, save some money. If you want to just improve, you can just supercharge the current employees as well.
I think it comes back to like what's their definition, and when I say they're the founder, the brand's definition of CX, right? Is it
Mm.
is it actually like a money making machine where it's like their marketing? If so, then maybe they might invest a little bit more in it. But if it is to save more money, then I could definitely see AI taking more of those jobs and roles.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think with AI, it's possible to earn more with CX, I think, than there ever has been because the personalization and the responses could be a lot quicker. But yeah, I think it depends on the outlook of the company.
Yeah. Do you have and again, free for all, any certain tools that you use in the e-commerce ecosystem that like you see some AI functionality that looks pretty cool? or not yet?
We look at them very regularly. It's just come through natively on Shopify for product descriptions, which I feel like for smaller merchants is really powerful because they're not copywriters. They don't potentially have the time to write descriptive copy. But I also feel like it's a bit dangerous in that sometimes the descriptions are just not as tailored as they should be. And I go back to that like tone of voice, brand voice type thing. They're very generic because there's no inputs on training the model. I've seen some great use cases of AI for like product testing and development of like, and I'm sure you have too, where, I have an idea for a new product. I'm going to literally render it in like DALL-E or Midjourney, create the product images, throw them on the website, run ads to a product that hasn't even been created yet outside of like a 3D render and just see how it hits. And then if, you run $5,000 worth of ads towards it, you get some decent data on whether it's going to convert or not. You email all those customers and you say, thanks for participating. This is actually a demo run. Like we've refunded your money and here's $100 voucher for our store. And then you can make informed decisions without actually buying a ton of inventory and like trying to actually launch it. So I've seen that done pretty effectively over the last 6 months with a combination of AI tools through.
Have you guys done that as well? I imagine like with website development, or should we not talk about that?
No, definitely. I mean, we can now do a lot of our development work much quicker. So like the way I think about it is our front end devs now are just like 10x developers. They can get stuff done quicker. So it actually saves our clients money. Most of our clients still spend the same amount. We just get more done. So we can just churn out product releases and features way, way quicker. So I think it's definitely got great applications.
Now, the Shopify, you talk about Shopify's like AI capabilities. I don't know too much about that yet, but it sounds like they're actually really starting to develop a lot in the last few months. What were some of those that just came out, if you know of them?
Yeah, sure. So in like I think it's the summer editions.
Yes,
you can write a very detailed product description using Shopify's AI with just like quick sentence, like black cotton t-shirt. It'll write you out 2 paragraphs for your product description using the AI that are way more descriptive and way more sales focused than potentially, a standard user could do. So,
but it doesn't take any of your brand voice and what you were talking about before and like how you've created other products on your website, does it?
Not that I'm aware of. It may do in the background, but you don't have explicit control over it, which is what I would want. I would want to be able to say, like, here's my brand voice, here are the guardrails, here's what to say, here's what not to say, and potentially here's some training text, like that's how those things learn. But that has not come through. Shopify is very, very focused on AI, but I think it's still like day one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But like, again, to your brand voice, like, I don't think it really matters until it's whatever you're developing is specific to your knowledge base, your brand, your voice, what happens, right? Like it gets you like 70% of the weight there, and then you still have to take 30% after. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think for enterprise, it's going to take some time. It's really helpful for smaller businesses that are just getting started, which is a large amount of Shopify's business. But yeah, if you're Nike, you're not going to rely on an AI tool to write copy for you at this point. It's not there yet.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Sean. Like, first of all, thanks for joining me on the first episode. Really appreciate it. I hope you were, engaged as much as I was. I definitely love the questions and the answers that you provided. Anything I was going to ask you if anyone that's interested wants to kind of partner with PacificIQ, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, just shoot me an email. Like my email, candidly, is just my first name, Sean @PacificIQ.com, or hit our website, complete the form. That all comes through to us. We're like a very low volume agency. We don't work with everyone. We'll only work with brands that we know we can provide help to and actually improve. So yeah, hit me up. Let's have a chat. Let's see if we can, improve any of your metrics for you. And, that's kind of the way we operate. So Brian, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Always a good chat about these kind of topics.
Let's do it again, Sean. Maybe we'll wait a couple months to see, maybe even just like 30 days. I'm sure something's going to come out in the next 30 days.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I'd love to, for sure. Whenever you need me, I'm available.
Thanks, Sean. All right. Talk to you later.